Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Laura.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Laura. Hello.
Hello.
Ready? All right, folks, thank you for coming and attending the meeting of Webster County Planning and Zoning. Real quick, we'll start with our roll call. Margot Knipple, I am here. Tyler Lane.
Here.
Laura Kelly.
Here.
Gary Nelson.
Here.
Tommy Smith.
Here.
And Arlen Gorachowski.
Here.
All right. Item 2, review and approval of minutes from the January 10th, 2023 meeting. Did everyone have the opportunity to review minutes?
Yeah.
All
Yep.
right, Tommy makes a motion
Second.
and Gary seconds. All those voting to approve the minutes, say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimous. All right, new business. We have a presentation tonight on the 2022 permitting activities in Webster County. Allison, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, Jeff and I both do. So just like last year, wanted to update you guys and see the trends in the past 5 years of Webster County. The first graph is the main structures, so secondary homes, single family homes. Still kind of, on trend, wasn't as good as last year, but not by much. For accessory structures, 2020 was still the bigger year with that. I think that was because we reduced the permit fees by half. But yeah, still better than last year and still kind of staying in that average where we kind of expected to be. Do you have anything to add on that?
Well, we're just hovering right around those marks of, 14 to 15 single family homes and maybe around 50 accessory structures. This is just residential. Yeah. Whatever.
And then non-residential, so this is the, commercial structures or if the coke nitrogen, when they were expanding, they had to get a permit for all their temporary trailers and things along those lines. So again, pretty comparable to last year. This was the revenue that was generated. Didn't quite get to 2018, but it's been going up the past since 2019. So I think it's only going to keep going from there, especially with what we're doing.
Does anybody know why there's such a drop between 18 and 19?
I don't. That was before both of our time. So
That just looks like.
Pandemic,
mhm.
possibly.
I mean, that was late 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that I don't know. And honestly, this was before, I said both Jeff and I, and it very well could have been just poor record keeping.
Yeah.
And I don't have, just didn't have access to it, so.
Yeah.
That the record keeping has gotten significantly better.
Yeah.
So then I think we talked about it a couple meetings ago in July. Planning and zoning acquired the environmental health responsibilities, and I did the 5-year trend on wells because we have a tracking system for that. Unfortunately, we don't have a tracking system for septic systems, but that's something that I'm working on meeting and building that moving forward. But past, I don't have any way to track up. So this is where we were at since taking over, planning and zoning taken over. We've significantly increased the amount of wells that are being tested in Webster County. 160 out of the 191 were just in the 6 months that we took over it. So just
What's the public feedback you're getting on that? Or
it's great.
positive?
I mean, we haven't gotten any negative feedback on it. I've actually had the DNR emailed me today asking to speak at the IEHA conference, wondering if I'd be able to, about how we've increased the numbers, and the Story County Environmental Health Officer has been asking me for help on how to increase those numbers for their county. And how we've been doing it is I've been, just went by township and sending out postcards individually to homeowners when the last time they've had their well tested, the importance of doing it. And after I test your well, you'll be on the calendar to be tested every year, so you won't have to call and make that appointment.
I don't think a lot of people realize that it's a free service.
They don't.
You should have.
Yeah, they don't. So we had that article in the paper not too long after we took over, and it's been nonstop. Yesterday, we're doing 19 well tests. So yeah, it's a free service, and it's as many wells until it gets to no contaminants and no water. So Went out and did Gary's, it was very cold. Yeah, that's where we're at, they're only going up. And then revenue, so. How the well service works, the state actually gives us a grant to protect the groundwater, in Webster County. And that's what covers the cost of it, so it's at no cost of county. Plus we receive, an administration fee for going out and doing that, so the state's paying us that way too. So between well renovation, well plugging, and well testing, that's all covered under the Grants to County program that hopefully I'll be able to educate Webster County about a little bit more as I keep learning about it, so.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of where we're
That's
at. Yeah, that's where we're at with last year, so.
All right, thank you, Allison. Thank you for that extra time and work that you're putting in. And, you know, like Tom says, it's, you know, a free service that maybe people aren't aware of. And that's,
He wasn't.
I look at it.
I did.
Well,
I did, I was by his place and I had one more kit for the day. I said, hey, I'm coming to your house.
well, you know, in drought conditions, I mean, I think that's a good thing to be testing. I've heard some horror stories of maybe people that are having some issues with their wells. So I think that's it's a good time to be doing this, so. All right, well, thank you.
Yes, of course.
All right, Jeff.
Okay, next item.
Next item, discussion of the commercial utility grade wind energy conversion systems. Do you have a presentation for us?
Yes. Good evening, Jeff Johnson, Planning and Zoning Administrator. So about a little over a decade ago, the county permitted its first wind farm project called the Lundgren Wind Farm. That consisted of 107 wind turbines in South County. So since I've been here, I've been getting phone calls from residents mostly in the northern part of the county, far north. It appeared one time somebody was looking at doing a joint project up there and trying to get Webster County approval and Humboldt County approval at the same time, and that kind of fizzled, and they've been out knocking on doors, and I've heard up to 2 or 3 firms have been out there, you know, trying to get a project and trying to get landowners signed up. So this came to our attention, the supervisor's attention, and they said, hey, you guys, what we should probably do is go back, take a look at our separations, our setbacks. What you'll find here with the research that I've given you is that a lot of people did adopt, like Webster County, we adopted the model ordinance back in the day. And quite a few of them have amended that to even provide more stricter or stringent setbacks, especially from the single family dwelling units. Even that those are participating, I'm guessing it's more sound, you know, complaints or issues with sound, and also and visual impacts and so forth. So, I mean, when you look at our current ordinance, which was the model ordinance that was adopted over a decade ago, and you look at what other counties have done or have amended, they're much more stringent. And yeah, I'm all for it, and then taking a look at this and, you know, protecting our homes, our conservation areas, road right of ways, wetlands, and they, you know, they even put the Des Moines River on here is something maybe we should look at, you know, because that's a wildlife corridor, so to speak, you know, and then how far we keep those from the river itself. I mean, we could go further into depth and talk about other small creeks and rivers. I don't know if we really want to or not, but you know, I don't think we want, you know, we have to allow the use. I mean, we can make it as difficult as we want, but we can make, you know, we can make sure that, you know, there are some protections in place, especially from, you know, single family homes and aesthetically, maybe the passerby traveler or whatever, so that these do fit in Webster County and so forth. So with that, what you'll see up here is our current requirements and how far, you know, someone was to come in here. It's a conditional use permit request in the A1, A2 zoning district, which is the right way to handle these. They're in agricultural areas. And I don't know if you just want to take each one at a time and take a look at it and what your recommendation would be. What I want to do is kind of get your recommendation, work through some numbers, and come back and we'll go ahead and advertise for a public hearing to review those again before we move it on to the Board of Supervisors for their first, second, and third consideration and adoption. So with that, with the research, I kind of want you guys to kind of work through this. I have my recommendations. I mean, if you want to hear what my recommendation is for each one and kind of work from there, that's up to you guys, or you guys want to kind of work together. So,
Why don't you shoot first?
okay.
Told you that today.
So from what I, and I'm not gonna take these in any particular order, but, so from wildlife management, state rec areas, or wetlands of the Des Moines River, what I'm seeing, and tonight the conservation board is meeting, Matt Cosgrove's meeting with the conservation board. His feeling is that they're gonna be recommending a mile, from those, and so that's where I'm kind of at, is a mile from wildlife management, state recreation areas, 1 mile from any protected wetlands. Again, these are habitats, and then a mile from the Des Moines River itself. So I think we should include the Des Moines River. In terms of road right of way, right now we have half the diameter of the rotor. What I'm seeing is about 1.5 times the height of the turbine itself.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
When it says the rotor, what part are they talking?
The center of it.
Just the center.
Yes, yeah.
So
It's minimal.
very good.
Yeah. So then from dwelling units, we're looking at, I want to say a good half mile as opposed to 1,000 feet, almost doubling that. Half mile is,
For hog houses, how are they?
I'm sorry, what was
What's
that?
the, for a hog house, how far is it from, a dwelling?
That's an accessory building, so there would not be,
Okay.
there would not be any type of,
We don't have anything to do with hog houses, right? I just didn't know what the number was.
yeah.
Well, wasn't that was kind of addressed as a non-occupied
Yeah,
structure.
it's not occupied.
Yeah.
Property lines, at least 1 times the height of the turbine itself from the property line, if not just a little bit more, so. I kind of think what fits Webster County, in our minds, and how, how we want to protect our residents from these impacts and protect our, our wildlife management, state recreation
Right.
areas.
Yeah.
And so forth. So, I mean, if you don't think, these are sufficient, the ones that have, Adair has a half a mile from wildlife conservation, Worth has a mile. I mean, I'm seeing pretty much a mile is the max.
Did you say for the right of way?
1.5 times the height of the turbine itself, yeah. And then with that same concept, but since these are, wildlife management, the wetlands and the Des Moines River, a mile, Oh, there you go. Oh, okay, that's what you're putting up there, okay. So, feel free to use those, discuss, if you guys want to modify those and change those and increase them, decrease them. We do have the public here, we want to welcome your input too, I'm sure Margot, we do have your correspondence that you sent, and they have read that, and you'll have your opportunity again, like I said, we'll come back with the proposed draft, with the changes, and to talk about that.
I mean, at this point, at this stage in the game, I think if we keep it somewhat informal, so we can get everybody's comments and get your feedback and along with our feedback, to try to put something together. I personally, looking at the information that you sent to us, Jeff, from the Iowa Environmental Council, all of the different counties that they had here, I looked at each individual county. And that's a good point. When you're looking at all these different counties, all the counties have different things. They've got different directions they're going. They've got different things that they're trying to promote when you're talking about recreation, wildlife areas and that type of thing. So that's maybe why we're seeing some of the variance and some of that. I personally would like to see as far setback as we can. You just made the statement that we have to allow these things.
We could make it
To what end?
easy or difficult or whatever you want. I mean, I've been in and I'll handle other uses for instance, adult uses where we pretty much said, okay, but you gotta allow them, but then we made it so difficult that we ended up mapping it out, and really the only place you could put one is right here, and that was it, you know, it's because you don't wanna be sued, that's the bottom line, you gotta allow it, and so in my mind, you gotta think about how you're gonna protect, you know, our resources and our residents, you know, that's the bottom line, so.
And our resources and our residents now, as we see them, is one thing. But as I gave Arlen a ride to the meeting, and, you know, we kind of briefly talked about how there's 20 years from now, and there's 50, 60 years from now. Especially when you're talking about something like wind turbines, with their decommission process, where they're only going 4 feet below the surface. You know, I can show you areas in our pasture land that my family's owned for 100 years, where you have that much erosion. And I don't personally agree with just the 4 feet on the decommissioning. I wish they would go further, but I've been told that with all the concrete that they put in those things, that they can't go down any further. I don't know if anyone's heard otherwise, but I think that we've been, as a county, we've allowed the turbines, we've allowed the solar energy, we've got the ethanol plants. I think we're doing more than our part for renewable energy systems. My electric bill hasn't gone down any. My price of gas hasn't gone down any. So I want to make sure we're protecting Webster County and not losing things where we have set up right now what we've got for recreation areas and that, but we don't know what those recreation areas are going to be 20 years from now. We don't know what they're going to be 50 years from now. But if we start slapping up wind turbines around these things, I can tell you what it's going to be. It's going to be a big fat zero. So my opinion is set back as far as we possibly can to keep that in mind, because once those things go in, you've really limited your area. You and I had a conversation about the Fort Dodge Airport, and especially looking into that northeastern part. If our Fort Dodge Airport were to ever expand, that might not be the place to put these things. And again, I'm not talking about an expansion right now or in 10 years. I'm looking at possible expansion in the next 50, 60 years. But if we have a bunch of those wind turbines right there, that could be an issue. So I guess that's my opinions on it. Is I would like to see setbacks as far as we can.
The other thing I want to say, yeah, the decommissioning, you drive up around Alta, that area, there's a lot of those 3-legged stands up there. And there's no turbine on top anymore, those are standing up, so decommissioning, and a lot of times the turbine rollers are sitting down on the bottom, on the ground, right beside them. You can tell they burned up or had a fire. And I know those are older technology ones up there, but I think it's a big eyesore when they're not even cleaning them up once they're taking them
Did
down.
they have the decommission things in the contract?
I don't know on that for sure, but if you drive that area, it looks pretty bad, even up Worthington, Minnesota. So just making sure we protect this county.
Southwestern Minnesota is just,
Yeah,
it looks horrible. If you've ever had the opportunity to drive around in that area, they're like right next to the roads. There's so many of them, and they're the shorter ones. They're not the great big tall ones. And it looks bad. And it's sad because it is such a nice rolling countryside and it is very picturesque. But then you've got these things all over the place. And so when you talk about that, Jeff, and you talk about, we have to allow them. And I think that's a conversation that we need to have within the county. And, maybe not decide on tonight or anything, but I think we need to talk about to what end. To, how many ethanol plants do we put in? How many solar farms do we put in? We have a finite amount of acres.
Mhm.
And I think it's a conversation that has to be had.
I just wanted to
Well, I mean,
chime
if you guys want to even further restrict it, I mean, we could even add another line in here, creeks, and there's a lot of creeks that have further separation. I mean, I didn't go that far. There's a lot of creeks throughout the county where we can have a certain separate, or, requirement there, so.
Laura, did you have some comments?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I am also for maximizing the setbacks. I think there's, when I, for crop insurance, have had to go out and map these claims, you're looking at 30-year impacts is what the windmill companies are paying for, is 30 years worth of impact to the environment, to the ground, compaction wise, for everything that they're putting across the ground, and the amount of concrete and everything that's used. So I think they're very detrimental to the environment, essentially. And of course, I'm going to always be one that is going to side with keeping our ground as pure and good as we can. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, that's one resource that we're just not making more of it. And Polk County is a good example of how, as those borders push out, there is no more farm ground. It's covered in concrete, it's covered in buildings, and they don't get more of that. And I understand the need for the economic value of them. But, I also want to make sure that, any of you with small children, that there's something here in 50 years, 60 years. I feel sorry for anybody who's a young farmer these days, because, trying to get farm ground is next to impossible. And I think if we don't start looking at some of these resources more from a saving them, preserving them, as opposed to exploiting them, I think we could be in trouble. So, if we're talking about doing some setbacks, I'm not in favor of doing anything, the absolute farthest we could go from these recreation areas. And we do have a lot. We have, like you mentioned, Jeff, the Des Moines River, Lizard Creek, Brushy Creek, Miller Marsh. We have so many areas like that, yeah, we really need to protect from these kinds of structures. And the information that you sent was really good in talking about, issues that I didn't even think about before, with the migratory birds and some of these other issues of how they're putting them in, whether they're putting them in a straight line, a north-south line versus an east-west line. I think keeping them away from as much as we can.
Well, one thing we may want to expand upon is the dwelling unit. So we could break that into two areas, one being the non-participating owner and one being the participating owner. In that case, the participating owner might have a half-mile requirement from anyone, and someone that's not participating in that project they'd have to be a mile away from their house. And we have a more stringent setback, because those people that are participating, they're living with it, so to speak, whether that's right or wrong, and so you'll see that in here. And some of the counties is that they'll have two different separations, and, so I just decided to keep, my recommendation was a half a mile, but we can look at that and break that down if you guys like, to a participating, not participating dwelling. Houses do change, so but people know what they're buying when they're buying it.
Yeah.
Is there a law that you can keep it out of the county? Maybe not wrong, but
Any type of use, you're gonna have to allow it either as a permitted use or conditional use. Otherwise you're discriminating the use. Yeah, it's like you can't discriminate the use, the county will be sued, regardless of what type of use it is. Like I had mentioned adult uses, I've had experience with that one before. It's like, yeah, we wanted to ban them completely out of the city one time, and it was like, no way, you can't do that. You gotta allow it in some hard way or fashion, so we can make it real difficult, in terms of providing further separations, further setbacks. If we want it, and so that's what we're gonna be discussing tonight. So, yeah, we just cannot, the county will be sued, so.
And that's, I guess, why I feel that that idea of saturation that we should talk about. You know, whether we take a map, Jeff, and we do like an overlay system, and you overlay all of these areas that we want to protect, and then say, okay, well, what's left? You know, and that's where, by making it extremely difficult, it's harder for them to come in. But we're protecting our resources.
Well, and I kind of raised a question, and I kind of look back at it, and I know we wrote letters, but and I don't know all the research, so I'm just ignorant on this, so just bear with me, but have we done an environmental assessment on the effects of the wind turbines on the bird and bat population in relation to insects, and then the resulting impact on the crop production? And if we don't have if the insects go up, the farmers are gonna use more pesticides, and then what's the effect of that on the water runoff and water quality and that stuff? I mean, I think there's a lot of downstream effects, you know, like we talked about the disposal of those. We got a contract in the mail that's like 20 or 30 years, but then what happens then? Is that company even still gonna be around? And then how do you get rid of them? How much energy are you really saving by all that metal that has to be recycled? You know, what does the carbon footprint mean? You have a carbon footprint, but do they take into consideration they're mining for that metal, they're producing that thing that, I mean, I just think there's a lot of questions with how beneficial are these to our environment, and I think that's what you're trying to say as well.
I totally agree with you, and that's, I guess that's my point, is that it's been, and it's a little strong to say that it's being pushed down our throat. I look at, like I said, I look at the younger generation, and I get it. I know that there's concerns about energy and those kinds of things, but I also think that there's a time and point where we need to maybe put the brakes on and say, now what are we really doing here? Like I said, it doesn't take a lot to go drive around into some areas that haven't spent. Like I said, I always think of Des Moines. The reason I throw Des Moines out is I used to live there years and years ago, and I remember going down and, you take 141 down, and there, you didn't hit any gas stations, and you got the one right there before you jump on the interstate. And now the expansion, and I think of the fields that were lost, the farms that were lost, just the ground that's lost. And like you said, you talk about the environmental impacts and things like that. I think at some point we just really need to say, yeah, how many more of these do we want? I agree with you on the decommissioning process. What happens when that company's not there? What happens? I know these leases are supposed to follow through for the life of the structure, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I haven't read any of the leases on it yet, so I don't know what happens when those companies, if the company goes out of business, that's a different story altogether. So.
They are looked at as being somewhat environmentally friendly, because part of our electricity is still produced by burning coal. So, wind turbines are cleaner than burning coal. I'll say that part. I don't have any. They're about 3 miles from our house. And I would think they've been around enough. Person should be able to find some data on them.
Well,
But they're not new.
I just think of 2 years ago when Texas had the ice storm, and they didn't have electricity, and they pulled electricity from our area to Texas. So it was 35 or 40 below, and we were not warned. I remember that, and we were without heat it only ended up being about 45 minutes, but we didn't know that. And so then my thought is, well, how reliable are these in a disaster? And really, when you compare coal to wind, and I don't know all that data, but is it really cleaner by the time you figure making the wind turbines, decommissioning the wind turbines, maintaining the wind turbines, taking the ground out of production?
Yeah.
Has that all been looked into?
I used to be a real estate appraiser, and I appraised a farm one time, and the sellers kept the windmill. They kept their driveway down the windmill and around, and they sold the farm, but they kept the windmill. That was unique. So, there's different ways of handling it.
that here in Webster County?
No,
Yeah, well, I wonder if this is really an issue. I mean, do you have landowners in northern Webster County that are interested in putting up like this? Have you had, I mean, we've had 3 companies knock on our door about it or send us letters, but, you know, are there people that are jumping up to put them up? I mean, are we getting a cart for the horse here? I mean, you know,
Don't know, no, it's a private, more of a private matter between them and. You probably never know, I would never know.
is Humboldt, they were trying to put them in Humboldt. And then all of a sudden, they're in the first 2 miles in Webster County, probably because they weren't getting people in Humboldt. And this has been 2 or 3 years ago, we went to a meeting in Humboldt about it, because we have some land there. And, I don't see any turbines in southern Humboldt County. And so people aren't jumping up and down for it there either. So, I don't know, none of the landowners in my, or, you know, so.
And that's the thing about, like Jeff says, you know, having to allow it. There's gonna be that property owner that is gonna say, yep, great, I want the income. I want that generated income, I don't have to do anything, they're gonna take a piece of my property, okay, and they'll be fine with it. And so what our job is to say, okay, to that person, here are the guidelines that you need to follow. And we want to, and looking at what we've had, so what we need to do is to say, okay, you're gonna have it this far back off the road. You know, we don't wanna see it, we don't want it next to, conservation areas, that kind of thing. I don't know of anybody, any of the wind turbine companies that have come in, that's not an eminent domain issue, is it?
purely voluntary.
Yeah,
So they can't use eminent domain.
No,
No.
it's all voluntary. And that's why you see it spotted around, because some people don't want them, and that's their choice. The biggest complaint that I've heard on them is they connect those with wires from turbine to turbine straight line. They don't go down the ditch and over, and that really caused a lot of problems for people that haven't and didn't realize they were doing that. For, you know, cutting all their time and going a quarter mile over, you know, where that's just something that, but it's all voluntary. You know of any places in southern Webster County where they did come close to a marsh or anything, you guys?
Oh.
Is that, what restrictions was there when they did the first ones there, south of where?
Yes,
Just,
sir, on the left hand side there, yeah, those are the
Yeah.
ones, yeah, those haven't changed,
correct.
yeah.
and that's what should change.
I'm Steve Palmer and America. We own a farm right north of Vincent. I can stand in my yard and I can view all of Miller Marsh. It's 185 acres of mitigation area. That's the area where they widened Highway 20. Every time they crossed a wetland, they had to find another one. So that is where that is. I have old maps that show that area was actually a lake. So anyway, I also have over 100 acres of CRP ground surrounding Miller Marsh. First of all, Miller Marsh is a very expensive piece of ground. They also block the major tile line running underneath that ground and laid a solid pipe so they can connect the major line from both sides. If anybody knows what tiling costs, it was thousands of dollars of Webster County money to that thing. So, I can view all the wildlife that is there, and it is hundreds and hundreds of geese and ducks. They're end up in my pasture, which is almost 3/4 of a mile away. I have several, probably 60 acres of CRP about a mile away. 2 years ago, I had several people duck hunt in my cornfield. Because it was all the wildlife now are using my ERP is expanding into the wildlife management area. So just a mile away thing is probably gonna end up right in the middle of the ERP ground, which has the wildlife in it from the Miller Marsh. I did write a letter to the board of supervisors, and I think I've handed it out to you tonight. I think every area, if you do decide, every area in the county might have a different proposed requirement for this. Our farm's been in our family for 150 years, a little more than 150 years. So I have all the tile lines and the maps and the old maps show that this whole area around Vincent is really a gut. So if they decide to put a wind turbine up, why jeopardize the whole area for a wind turbine? I think the board of supervisors would be very uncomfortable to have something like that happen in our area. So anyway, thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely, and you bring up a good point, Steve, because that's one of the things that I noticed in our information analysis, and that's why I had pull up the solar farm one. Right now, on ours, where it talks about where we talk about the different standards and things that they need to agree to. I'd like to change our language where it says drainage system applicants shall be responsible for immediate repair of damage to public drainage systems stemming from construction, operation, or maintenance of the wind turbines. And it needs to say public and private. And we put that in, that's why I had to pull that up. We put that in the solar one to make it public and private. I don't want to see anybody, like Steve says, there's so many private tile lines that are out there that we maybe don't know about and aren't documented. And I don't want somebody coming and saying, hey, you may not know that tile line's busted for a couple of years, and then come back and tell the company they need to fix it, and they say, well, that's private, so we don't have to fix that. So that language definitely needs to be changed to say public and private.
The way we zone things, can we take special places like Miller Marsh and Brushy Creek and just color code it and do what we want for?
Yeah, I mean, we could have a separate requirement just for those areas.
Declare them,
Yeah, because I mean, they're so expansive compared to maybe some of the other smaller rec areas, those are the two largest in the county, I believe, so we could, have a different setback.
I'd suggest something like that.
Yeah.
Have the designated areas.
I might say that, I got well over 150 acres of CRP, but over 100 acres is right close to the end of Marsh. I'm getting paid $300 an acre a year for CRP ground, which is, thank you very much, all you guys are paying me. So that expense per year to preserve managed wildlife management area seems like throwing money away if we do not have a turbine.
It seems a kind of a juxtaposition of government money, federal money paying for a conservation purpose.
Yeah.
And then putting a wind turbine close to, to something like that. And I don't know how you would, since CRP is kind of an ever changing thing, I don't know how you would do it.
That's a tough one.
But I like Gary's idea of some sort of an overlay type.
Yeah.
Where we just preserve those. I mean, We don't know where that's gonna expand, and I guess that's what I keep coming back to, is that we don't know with Miller Marsh. In particular, what can happen to that in the future. I certainly wouldn't wanna see anything built up closer to it, but it would nice to see it expanded to something for conservation purposes. The same with Brushy, you know, same with, along the Des Moines River and those Creek areas and those kinds of things. We don't know where they're gonna go. Look where they've gone for us right now, just in the last 10 to 15 years, with the addition of the boat ramps for the kayaking and, you know, yeah, the trail systems and all that. We start allowing some of these things close, we really kind of hem ourselves in to what we can do and what we can do for our children years from now. So.
That's a good point. I mean, Brushy Creek and Miller Marsh are big assets in the county, huge assets.
Huge
you know,
assets.
So, you know, so.
That marsh is doing a lot. I mean, you see a lot of cars parked there hunting season and people just, you know, even not hunting season, but we see cars there quite often.
Yeah. And you know, in Matt Crossroad, I think Webster County Conservation has done an amazing job of promoting and, you know, with building the new nature center and trying to get the trails all connected and everything. I think they've done a great job in trying to conserve and promote. And I think if we don't push these setbacks far enough away to honor what they're doing.
Well, they're beautiful areas. So I mean, now you're looking at, you know, the visual impact. And so, like you said, I mean, maybe we stretch that out from a mile to 2 miles. I'm just talking, you know, along around those areas. And so, you know, Brushy Creek and Miller Marsh, 2 miles, and all other conservation areas, a mile, wetlands would be a mile, you know, and, yeah, because the visual impact, there's something to be said about that, you know, as you look, those are 2 beautiful areas, not a lot of other beautiful areas throughout the county too.
Yeah.
No, a mile's not very long. Visually, it's not, you're right. It's not very long, you know.
I don't think that's far.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is there a limit that kind of proposed, instead of a mile or 2, you say 3 to 5?
A lot of these are arbitrary, to be honest with you. I mean, you gotta take into account the impacts, visual impacts the environment. It's just kind of a, yeah.
Is that okay like a lawsuit if you said?
Yeah, if you go too far, I mean, then I would put it, then they're gonna come at us like, you're not allowing us to do anything.
That's what I think.
So we don't wanna expend it, you know, crazy 5 miles. Yeah.
Walk it, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
I believe windmills, they try and target them in groups and clumps, and they send them out through distribution stations, like they're between Lehigh and there's a big substation. They shoot all the electricity to there and out. They just don't put one here and 5 miles away. They want to go across the
Group, you can see that at night.
Yeah.
And I can see why the, you know, yeah.
Why,
Yeah.
you have to get several landowners in the area.
Right.
To make it.
Yeah.
And I would think, I'm not too familiar with the topography of Webster County, but I'm sure Northern County has a higher elevation than the southern. Then they're looking for their elevation too, you know.
Yeah.
Several years ago, we had people in our area looking at it. And I found the engineer's name in my file today. And, he said, no, we decided it was better to go to the southern part of the county. So, we have been surveyed. I mean, you can find wind maps online.
And I think that's what they use too, is a lot of the wind maps and when they first started coming in. And you.
Well, they'll send out an instrument to do testing for, you know, months or maybe even a year in certain areas, and they'll, you know, it's like a meteorological tower.
Yeah.
So yeah, then they'll get all the data and they'll have, you know, how many X amount out there, and they'll say, okay, this is, you know.
I have looked at the wind maps. And I mean, there's street, things through Iowa that show different wind speeds. For some reason, right where we live, they're not that high. I don't know.
I don't know if they're necessarily looking for the wind speed, or it's more of just a consistent wind.
Yeah.
Because I think too much wind speed and things, I think they've got some sort of break on it where they can only go so fast. So
Yeah, they
So
can't.
that when they were looking for it.
It's really easy, just. You can, computer on wind speeds in Iowa, and you'll see the map,
Yeah, yeah.
where all the wind is.
There's federal money out there they're trying to get, to put it in.
Oh, okay.
But, but then you look at the atomic fusion that they just discovered, and they're saying 20 to 30 years, this is gonna be the heat source. They'll source of power, and, you're putting up a turbine that's a 20-year life, and in 20 years, we're in fusion, powered by fusion,
And that's, that's what I always look at is, I try to not look at it from a right now standpoint as much as a 50 to 100 years from now standpoint. Because the actions that we take today, they're going to affect that, so.
I kind of agree to add trips to your requisition. Where wildlife confined, so.
Yeah.
Just one more deep.
Allison, can you pull up a map of the county with all that on?
That's what I was gonna say, did Jeff put together a map showing us a mile from the outside radius of like brushy, 2 miles, different color codes. That, just so we get an idea of where those.
Yeah, I'll put something together at the next meeting. Well, it is 2 miles from Rushy and Miller Marsh. A mile from the river. I'll just, if there's any significant wetlands that are out there. So I mean, if a project ever came forth, they have to do an environmental study on all their drains, and they're gonna, on all their land, and you'd be surprised, there are wetlands out there. We actually have a wetland map too, that I can pull some information off of, some of the more significant ones. And then I think the idea would be to go ahead and put in the non-participating, participating owner for the dwelling, that way, half a mile from the participating ones, a mile. Non-participating ones,
Yeah.
protect them even more. So, and I think with all that, that's within reason. I mean, it's a lot better. I mean, you look at what we had before here. Very minimalistic. I mean, to me, there's really no protections there. I don't know what you're really protecting. Really with those minimal dimensions. I mean, maybe 1,000 feet from the dwelling unit, but that's, yeah.
It always freaks me out when I drive up to Pocahontas, when you're driving on the highway and there's that one that's like right there. And it always scares me. It's like, man, I hope that thing stays there.
Half diameter of the rotor, less than 100 feet. Maybe.
Yeah.
If that were to fall or a blade come off.
You want to cover that, yeah, you're right. You want to cover the fall zone and I might take a look at that a little bit further and get them back even a little bit further from the right of way, from the traveling public, but.
Fall zone and throw zone.
Throws. Oh, the throw zone.
The throw zone of a blade going. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
issues with fire and rescue and those kinds of things.
Yeah,
There was one up in, was it in southern Minnesota, I think it caught fire. And then it caught the field on fire, of course, underneath it. And, I mean, when you think about those kinds of things that could happen, you don't want that right next to the road. You certainly don't want next to buildings, that kind of thing. And I know they say that it doesn't happen, but obviously it did happen up in southern Minnesota, where there's one caught fire. So I look at that as just us being prudent and protecting, number one, our citizens, number two, our resources. And you know what, if it's really difficult to put another one in Webster County, sorry, yeah, so be it.
Yeah, but that's a conditional use permit.
Mhm.
Can we write something in there that says, hey, no matter what, when you're done with these things, you have to dispose of them and get them out of here.
They're required to do a decommissioning plan, and that's all part of that. So when they come forth with that approval, that's part of that. It's a condition of
What
approval.
I mean is that a decommission mode, you gotta do it within 20 years, or hey, if you're done using this, you got a year to get it off the property.
It's.
You know, you drive by.
Yes. No, yeah,
It's
well, it happens to be, by the end of the day, it's a legal document that worked out to Darren Driscoll's office with the applicant and how this is gonna get decommissioned.
Okay.
They come up with something that's reasonable. Yeah, we don't want it to be out there for more than,
Right
like
now,
you
it's
said.
180 days,
Yeah, and, yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I would want it to happen like as soon as possible.
Right.
My concerns are, as you guys mentioned, I mean, the way these companies change hands.
Well, the reason why the 180 days is because of the weather, the winter,
Sure,
the winter weather, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whether, whatever, time of year it is, whether with farming practices and that, trying to get into a field and digging out or taking out or, taking down. But, nothing past that, I would think.
No, that's, no.
So how does that work then with the company, if a company goes out of business? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just so stuck on that because
No, it's Darren.
yeah, I know, Darren.
So, yeah, that's something that we'll have to get worked on. That's a legal thing. Yeah. It could happen. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
I have two major natural gas lines running right on that place in through my land.
Yeah.
The original company put them in was People's Natural Gas. Then Northern Natural Gas bought People's Natural Gas. Then Enron, Enron bought all of those. And now it's owned by Black Hills Energy. And I have a farm tap that runs through my field half mile to service our place. Now they want to put their own gas line in. And they said, well, we're just going to cut you off. And I said, I have a lease with People's Natural Gas. The original says that you cannot take away my farm tap unless I don't pay my bill, and then you can. And they laughed. Of course, and I think the same thing is going to happen with the wind turbine.
Well, I think Darren's aware of that, and its successors have to take care of all that, so, I mean, that's the main thing, it's successors, and I just can't. Yeah, no, you're right, no, yeah, the bond,
And we did that with the solar, didn't we?
I think it's so, yeah.
I think we did put in the bond. It's sad that it happens that way, but it's a fact that when these companies get bought and sold, and their legal teams go from a few lawyers to an entire legal building. That's something else that I always keep in mind.
Originally, they were all Iowa companies.
Yeah.
They're not. Well, we're dealing with people that shows up from people coming from New Mexico, Arizona, Denver. They have engineers from Chicago. Not one person is from Iowa trying to find a new route for
Yeah,
and don't care.
yeah, and that's a big thing is that there.
And the engineers in Chicago never been on a farm.
You know what, you're on a cross area. Pile like, he said, can you explain what the pile is?
Wow.
He's an engineer.
What bothers me about these, I think most of these, they are not benefiting anyone anywhere here. Most of the energy going to Chicago, Minneapolis, or wherever it is. Why don't we get a kickback on this?
Well, and that's my point, that we, like I said, as a county, we've allowed all these renewable sources, which says, yes, we do believe in renewable energy, but like Marlon and I discussed, my electric bill's not gone down, my gas bill hasn't gone down. Where's our local benefit? And I feel like we're at this point where it's like, you know what, at the beginning, we were like, anybody come in, we need economic development, we'll take anything. We were desperate. I called it pimping out the county. And I think we just need to put on those brakes and say, no, wait a minute.
Right.
Because it may not happen right now, but when you're talking future, I don't want to have anybody look back and say, wow, what were they thinking? Why did they write all these things?
Right. One unique thing we have going on, Des Moines is the intersection of two interstates, 80 through 35, so it's a great shipping distribution. We have an intersection of two railroads northwest of town, so that's unique for us. We can ship to, and that's very easy for plants, manufacturing, and not that much down here.
Well, that, it's west of town here, you got the intersection right there, Sarah.
Yeah.
And that's my point is that, yeah, we do have the ethanol plants. We have all the ethanol plants. We have all these things for renewable energy. But I think we also need to make sure we're looking at the conservation side of it, the recreation side of it, and say, you know, we really need to be,
With the benefit of the county too.
yeah, we need to protect these things that are also gonna be a benefit, a more immediate benefit to the county. And like you said, Tommy, I mean, we're not seeing some of the benefits of some of these other things. And obviously, the economic part of it, from the building standpoint, is there, that brought, you know, putting up the plants and everything, big economic boom. But now after the fact, you know, is it still happening? Are we still seeing that economic? I mean, Jeff, you might argue that we are, but I also think that you can have a good economic push from the environmental side, you know? Like I said, I think Matt Cosgrove has done a tremendous job in getting that new recreation center. We're gonna start utilizing our Des Moines River area down there. I think that's really gonna be awesome. That's gonna be a draw. So, yeah. I'm real interested to have you put together some sort of an overlay over all those areas.
Yeah, I'll do a map so that you can kind of see, you know,
Okay,
how far out we're looking, you know.
okay.
I'll just do a 2 mile map around the middle marsh and.
Yeah, I'd like to see like at least a mile and a half at the minimum. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once you see 2 miles, you visualize it, if you want to take half or 3/4 of it.
Yeah.
At a minimum mile and a half.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Like Tommy said, we're never gonna see any of that energy anyway, it's never gonna come here. Because Chicago's getting bigger, New York's getting, you know, wherever's going, California, they're getting bigger than we are faster. We're never gonna see any of that, the only thing that's getting anything is a landlord getting a little bit of kickback here.
Well, I think she said it right, you're gonna have your plan
yeah,
for the cities, and we're not getting anything from it, and they're gonna. They could potentially devastate. Buy the farmland to get what they need for a short period of time.
well, and
And 20 years isn't very long period of time.
yeah, and we're just not making more of that. There's just no way to make more farmland.
You really not.
I mean, it's just doesn't happen. Once you put concrete over it, it's gone. And I have a big problem with that. I had an argument years ago with someone in Des Moines about how farming didn't affect city of Des Moines. And I said, well, I think you're wrong. I said, farming does affect the city of Des Moines. I said, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for farming communities. I said, who do you think comes into the city and buys things and all that sort of thing? And this was, like I said, this was years ago when I lived down there, but, you know, expansion is good to a point. So, but like I said, when you're talking about farmland, we just don't get more of it, so.
Were any of you guys involved with the Clean Line Energy a few years ago? It was a company owned by 3 people in Texas. That wanted to take the energy from the wind turbines in northwest Iowa. Send them across Iowa, through Illinois to Chicago to a grid. And from that grid it goes to New York. Okay. There was 2 proposed lines, one was a half mile north of my house. And the second one was, no, it's up closer to rough line in that area, and there, being through Spencer and there. I was involved with a group that we got that defeated. It ended up going through Missouri, Kansas, in Illinois, and then there, and then I think there's another one proposed further south. But just as you said, all these turbines don't benefit us whatsoever.
I read about a town that had put up a turbine and they decided they hated it and they wanted to take it down and it cost $1 million to take it down.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, I mean, gotta think 20 years down the road, like you say.
Yeah, yeah. I remember a meeting that we went to when they wanted to run the power lines up in the gallery up to the ethanol plants. We all went to a meeting down there about running these high transmission lines up there, and they showed us the route and everything. And a few of the participants including my father, stood there and said, well, why don't you choose this high transmission line that's right over here? And the guys from Mid-America just stood there and went, huh? You know, and we're like, there's already, and Dad goes, well, I know there's one there, we've been farming around, you know? And so sometimes you wonder if who's starting these projects, are they really here, are they really on the ground, do you really know what's going on? And I think if we don't, you know, I just think it's not prudent if we don't make sure we tell them what's going on. Say, you know, this, it sounds good to you when you're writing it out as an engineer or whatever, but for us, you know, things like Miller Marsh, things like Brushy Creek, that's important to us here. We're the ones that are going to be going to those places. Our kids are going to be the ones that are going to be enjoying those things. So I don't see anything wrong with trying to protect them. So.
There's one thing that you never hear anybody mention, but it's there, is trade voltage. These power lines do emit trade voltage. And there's several studies in Illinois where families actually just, when the power line came by their place, they decided to stay there. Most of their families develop some sort of a cancer. So there is trade voltage. When Clean Line came through, their whole selling point was that they was gonna use not alternating current, because that's what all the other, they were gonna use some other type of direct current. So it'd be less cancer crossing. So there is trade voltage in these lines, and people are affected by it.
Yeah. So Jeff, do you want to put together then a map for the next meeting?
Yeah, I'll put together the amendment, the map, amendment to the ordinance. I mean, with the numbers, we can change those numbers, recommend different numbers. We're gonna move forward with staff's recommendation and a map also. And then, take a look at that again. So
I think
this was a good discussion tonight, you know, as opposed to running an ordinance to you guys right away, you know, let's discuss it first before we prepare the ordinance. And, go from there.
Other than the information that you sent to us, have you had anyone else come in and be complaining, or have you had any other comments on them? From the public?
From the public, I may have had a couple calls with, you know, them living real close. I don't know if they're participating or not, but, you know, they do make some type of a noise, so obviously 1,000 foot, I'm sure there's a lot of factors there, probably the wind or whatever the direction, you know, but, they can actually hear that, the blades on those, and you should be hearing them, you know. I mean, you don't want to live with any type of nuisance, you know, so.
You know, at night I walk out my door and I can see Pocahontas, I can see I can see the lights of the turbines there, I've got turbines to the south, I can see the lights there, and, you know, I mean, you just see that all over the place.
Those
Yeah.
are awful to drive through. Just, I had to tell them.
Yeah,
It's awful to drive through.
it really is, and I know that they're supposed to be sort of synchronized, but it is so distracting when you're night driving, and I try to turn down dash lights just so I don't have that distraction light, but then you got this, and it's just all over the place, but.
This is kind of anecdotal, but we know people in Illinois that they have a winter right by their property, and you mentioned the noise, but he mentioned like the shadow that comes across. And I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know how far away that is, but he said that drives me crazy. I guess I've never even thought of something like that, you know, sun's behind it and it's one across your eyes.
And that was actually,
Yeah.
talked about in the Iowa Environmental Council, they talk about that shadowing.
Yeah.
And making sure, yeah, that's away from.
Oh, yeah, I don't know where that has to be.
And how does that affect crops? I think they're doing studies on it now, how the shadowing affects crops.
Well, you know, that was an issue too with the aerial spraying. I don't think that was looked at down in the southern part of the county. That if you were gonna be doing aerial spraying, which Arlen, you told me they're doing a lot more of. You know, having to fly around those things. And
I don't think they do.
I think it changes what they can do. You know,
Yeah, changes, yeah.
Yeah, would that be online, your map, or when you said put that out, or is that something
We have Beacon, Webster County out there. If you go under Beacon, Webster County, BEACON, Webster County, that gives you an area of Webster County. It's
He's talking about your map when you put the.
Yeah, I did a round, like,
Oh, yeah, I'll have to prepare that and bring it back. I mean, everything's public record, so our packets online, they'll be out there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then if I come to.
If he, when he puts it in the planning and zoning packet under the Webster County Planning and Zoning site, you can find all of our past meetings, minutes, packets, and all the information on there.
In order to adopt this, will we have to have a public meeting?
Yeah,
So there'll be a public meeting.
I mean, would you guys want to come back and discuss it again, and then have the public meeting a month after that again? It's up to you. I mean, we can move forward with the public hearing.
Should
Do
we
you
have
want to take another?
should we have our proposal together and then show it to them at that time, or what's your thoughts?
We can do it. We can do it.
Are you under a time crunch? Are the supervisors expecting?
No, not necessarily. I wanted them to adopt a moratorium to put a kibosh to everything.
That would be nice.
And that, they didn't want to go for that, because that would have stopped everything, for 6 months or a year. Because if a petition was to come in the door, they're subject, they could have a case, yeah. So,
Yeah,
not to say, I'm not aware, I mean, I don't hear really much at all, not to say there might be something brewing out there. I mean, tomorrow somebody could drop off something on my desk and it's a petition, and yeah.
who are the landowners around, other than you have your CRP in the marsh?
So there's crows, these people want some
Yeah.
there too.
And he's.
Okay. I don't know how. Because
He's the one that we also have our people drilling for hydrogen. Yeah. And they're drilling on some of that, they just got done, they just left and headed to Kansas, I guess, the drill company, but they're actually looking for hydrogen.
After you squeeze it out.
They wanted this at first.
Yeah, the contract says, the contract is $200 an acre. You sign plus 50% of royalties on any natural gas and small print other gases.
Sure.
And I finally got the lady from Denver who was sitting in my office, got her to admit that we're not after natural gas, we're after hydrogen. So, and I had another guy, I have a well on a place that they drilled several years ago. I bought the place, and still, the well's still there, and there's logs on all the wells. The Iowa Utilities Board, so every well drilled the last 100 years, it's with the Iowa Utilities Board, and you can see that. You can see what they discovered on the way down. Anyway, guy from Aurora, I don't call me and says, I've noticed there's some hydrogen on this well in this place if you want. Would you mind partner up with me to go for some hydrogen? Well, what are we gonna do with hydrogen? Well, I'm gonna put it on a semi, and I'm gonna truck it to California for green energy. And I said, doesn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose? But California has the idea that they want to abandon all fossil fuel vehicles.
Yeah, they already have that law, if your truck's over 1980 or something, you cannot drive.
Really?
They get lots of.
There's all kinds of rules out there.
Well, how many truckloads it take to pay for the well?
Well, that's just it though. That's, I guess that's always my point is that that's great that California wants to adopt that, but at what cost to what other state?
That's good.
At what cost to somebody else?
What's this wind energy cost in Iowa?
I mean, that's where I'm at with it, but no, if you can put together a map on that.
So at the March 14th meeting, I'll have a map and I'll have the proposed ordinance put together with the criteria, and we'll go ahead and move forward with the amendment for discussion. I think we'll have another meeting.
So maybe. We gotta get it. But these rules, yeah, they're like, oh, yeah.
We may be okay, but
It's not going to me, knowing that they can do, they can't just take it. They're not really doing it, because that's how a lot of my big questions, like, well, can they come in and just take it for the night? No, it's voluntary. Makes you feel better.
There is, they're working on the bill right now. And then they had, in fact, there was something. How devastating, I think how, renewables rules. Association has said it, that you know how devastating it could be, not have so they're really pushing to allow.
Yeah, I'm not still, that's, it's not a couple, it's not a benefit, you know, why would you? Yeah, I don't know why they're doing that. That's another one of those issues of somebody else coming in with their engineers from out of state and telling you this and that, what you need.
When I say that they're transferring the benefits from the private company that's doing this, which is going to be a tremendous benefit, to how it's going to benefit the Iowa farmer. So it's going to be, they're saying, well, that's a public thing because it's going to benefit farmer, which just like you say, your energy, your gas price never comes down. And so the private company that's putting these 5x2 is going to. They're wrong with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's plan on that then, Jeff.
Yeah, March 14th, we welcome you back again, do a public hearing, or proposed changes.
Was there anything else on those changes that you? I mean, I think we kind of covered most of them, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and other than me asking you to put that in,
Yeah.
have that language in there,
That only makes sense, yeah.
private,
Yeah.
okay. I don't know, Jeff, if it would help for the folks that came, that information that you had from the Iowa Environmental Council. If this is what Jeff put together for us on the siding of that, is that
That's part of the
online?
packet, yeah, but if there's anything you guys want or need, come to my office, we're here to help you.
And if you don't, I'm sorry, if you don't see it under the planning and zoning with all the meetings, there should be a button that says packet, and everything that they have is all under there too.
Yeah, but it was really interesting to read through this, and, you know, and I actually even went to the extent of each one of these counties, pulling up all the counties, looking at a map of the state of Iowa, looking at where these counties are, and there really is just no rhyme or reason to it. It's just kind of all over the place, all over the state, that these counties, these different ordinances.
Could you notice a pattern around wetlands or lakes or?
That's what I was looking
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
actually, was some, and you could see a little bit maybe in northern Iowa. Not real noticeable, but that was what I was looking to see. I know trying to stay away from like the Los Hills and you know, those environmental impacts, was, I think they were trying to do. And you know, I don't blame any county for wanting to do that. Each individual county has their individual resources that they're trying to protect. So the different counties, we're not all gonna have that same thing, because we're not all gonna have the same thing to protect. Webster County needs to worry about protecting what Webster County has. You know, and other counties can do their thing, but we need to protect what we have, so. That's my thoughts on that, and so Jeff will have something put together for us at the next meeting. And if we have if anybody else has any other comments on it, if not, we'll go on to our next real quick item. All right, Jeff, on to item C, the transportation corridor planning, comprehensive plan text and zoning ordinance, text amendments.
There we go.
There we go.
So the consultants could not make it, they'll be back at our next meeting. So, as you recall, our last meeting, we had a pretty productive meeting. Identifying, the areas, along major corridors. For future development, making sure that we identify these zones and have, and adopt, overlay requirements that. By the end of the day. Address the, permitted uses that we want to see, and then more importantly, develop aesthetic standards architecturally and from landscaping perspective, signage perspective to make sure we have, our corridors are appealing, so we, bring in growth. And so this is all a result of the stump stop, we call it the travel center, when it came in out west or out east here on Highway 20. The Board of Supervisors made a step back and take a look and study. We hired a consultant to take a look at our corridors and do some corridor planning. So with that, PowerPoint presentation I put together tonight was to go ahead and analyze each and every one of these real quick. By the end of the day, obviously we'll have some comprehensive plan text amendments and some zoning ordinance text amendments. And we want to identify whether or not the uses in these areas are strict commercial uses, industrial uses, or a mix of commercial and industrial uses, or residential, or a mix of all three, or, or whatever. So also, if you want to go to the next slide, these aren't in any particular order. This happens to be the Harcourt. What I ended up doing is putting the zoning map to the right. This is around the major city, around the city here. It's A2 is green. In this area here, as we take each and every one of these, the consultants wanted me to have a discussion with you guys. I think, so we're looking at, these three quadrants here. I would think that we're looking at commercial and or when I say industrial, I don't mean heavy industrial. I'm talking about light industrial, something that's aesthetically appealing. So we're by no means we're talking about any type of heavy industrial. We might as we get up here along Highway 7, but this is more light industrial as opposed to Harcourt will address their residential, as they grow in the future, way down the road. But not to say this couldn't be changed also, but that's what we identified there. If there's anything I'm saying that you don't agree with, or if you want to move on to the next one, we're just gonna kind of visit each one of these. This is the Moreland one. And right now these are zone commercial. Again, we're probably looking at the same thing, commercial and or industrial. This is along Highway 20. I just can't see residential hopping over,
So what you're showing here, Jeff, the pink area there on the right is,
well, right now this is all commercial. Yeah.
that's what it currently is,
Yeah.
but what you're showing on the left, are you showing bringing that down to the south then, or not?
Yeah, that's showing the overlaid zone to come down to here also, but this is already being utilized for, detention. So this won't be developed, so to speak. So again, we want, commercial industrial uses along the corridor. Duncombe, Bassian, as it comes out, I believe that's what it is right there. So what the consultants ended up doing is, when they had talked, that's why you see the blue patch. They were looking at a half a mile, in some cases a mile. They reduced that to like about a quarter of a mile. So I think what you're looking at is the 240-acre parcels. I don't know what I call parcels, but
So what we talked about there is actually a half mile.
I was gonna say it's
to the west.
further to the west,
It's about
actually.
P-73 unions, that's.
Yeah.
oh, it's a union over here.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
So that needs to be-
Oh, that's union. Okay,
That's
gotcha.
the Russian Creek Road.
Yeah, Rushy Creek Road. Okay.
So is that something the consultants need to change, or did we just? pull-
No, they did it. I was wrong there.
Okay.
That's it. It's union. It's pushed over. That's the major north-south road to Rushy Creek. So again, commercial, industrial. This here, north of Fort Dodge, this is the Highway 169 corridor that already has a few. I want to say commercial and industrial uses along here. Along the west side. Definitely light industrial. I don't think you're gonna have any, I mean, there's no major intersection there to promote any commercial. So I think that one, yeah, I have written down just light industrial uses. This is the Barnum one. Industrial, strictly industrial.
We want to stretch it clear west of Barnum like that.
Yeah, I think what they were trying to do is encompass, it, you know, you've got these two big factories out here.
On the west
On
side.
the west side of
We
it.
tried to all the way over the
They took it on the west side.
That was with the semis, take that back road all the way to,
peak, is it peak 29?
yeah, to 169, that's how the some of them get.
Yeah,
across there.
come right down from.
Where that old
from
silo
your
was.
co-ops. Yeah,
Yeah, that's strictly an industrial land use. That'd be an industrial overlay. This here in Gowrie, again, a mix of commercial and industrial types of uses on the south part.
did you get any feedback from anyone in Gallery? I know Vernon said she thought someone was gonna contact you or talk to you about,
I haven't heard anything.
okay.
Yeah. But okay, this is I was missing a map from these guys and I was trying to get it for today, but I couldn't get in touch with them. So this is the 169 Highway 20 intersection there. And again, the northwest border of quadrant, this tension. Again, I think we're looking at, we already have, a couple businesses that are utilized down to here. Again, let's see what I have for this one here. Yeah, mix of commercial or industrial, light industrial uses.
So on the south end of that is the old county building.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so what is that? Is that just?
Commercial. Yeah, that's all, everything's commercial.
I know like a crane company or something has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Owns it or rents it out or something, but they have really done
They
anything.
look all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know if that could be expanded on.
I think the county sold that to them, didn't they?
I think it is, I think it is like that. And this happens to be Highway 7, 169. Corridor. Right now, we have quite a few light industrial uses there, I think we want to get some commercial in there. Especially if that's, especially out through here, there's something that here that's somewhat appealing. Even, as these buildings get demolished, these are old buildings here, which I think these come down, so.
You've got that commercial.
Yeah, commercial. And, yeah, light industrial.
Okay.
I mean, we can further dissect these and say that, this is definitely, strictly. Commercial. I mean, this is already developed light industrial up here, but, that may be the route to go, just to set that aside as strict commercial. But there's something to be said about allowing flexibility, because you could have a nice light industrial building goes in too, that's meaningful for that area. Colville, this is where, yeah, they did a half a mile on each side of the road here. Yeah, again, we're probably looking at a mix of industrial uses, especially along P59. Those are all mining related industries. And then probably a mix of commercial and industrial some, possibly some warehouse distribution or something along Highway 20, but again, aesthetically appealing, some of them looks nice. If that was ever open up. This is from northeast of Fort Dodge. This is what I want to talk to you about, because, when we're assigned with the task or to look at transportation corridors, and this is not along a corridor. And it's directly adjacent to the city of Fort Dodge. And I can understand why it's an interesting area, because you can actually see, down the road, growth is gonna happen here. And it's set up for all kinds of opportunities, whether it's, more industrial or more residential, so to speak. Definitely not commercial, because it's not a major transportation corridor. So I don't know if you still want, I think the city of Fort Dodge is gonna have a lot of say what goes in here. We still want to keep this in the study, we can, or we can just take it out. So I'm leaving that open for discussion, because this is not on a major corridor, so to speak, but I understand why you guys brought this up, so.
If a commercial business wanted to go in there and they approached either you or they approached the city, do you see the city going ahead and wanting to annex that?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's kind of a moot point as far as.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, it's kind of a moot point, yeah.
I mean, if a big Casey's wanted to go in, or a Quick Star or something like that,
They probably wouldn't do that until that road was built
Yeah.
all the way up to it first, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting area, I think, that way down the road, I think you're definitely gonna see some development out there. That's one way, the city's definitely gonna grow out that way. Way down the road, but.
if we have it designated as such, does that hamper what the city would want to do or how the city could market it?
Well, the bottom line is, they would come to us, they could either come, right now, they could come to us. The city's gonna have a say to go within 2 miles, and. The city's gonna go, it's really, by the end of the day, what's gonna go in there, so. They're gonna do it, so.
I just didn't know if we have that as a designated area like that, does, for companies that are looking at us online, does that help to have it designated? Do you feel as a planner that helps to have some designation out there? Because then it does it, to you, does it say, hey, we're identifying this as an area or something?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to leave it, if, you could leave it up there, it says, as a future industrial / residential expansion. Of the city. Okay, I kind of see that as both, because you got residential down there, but you have some possible, or industrial to the south there, you have residential. Kind of being pushed out there too, so that way down the road, so.
That's the last one.
I know. this-
Okay.
Yeah, that is the last thing.
Could you go back to the first one, Allison, please? That showed all of the areas.
Yeah, that's a good.
So on the revised, there's no revised corridor development zone on that 2169.
Well, the thing is a lot of this was mineral extraction through here.
Okay,
And held, with the mining companies. But yeah, they really need to identify this area here.
okay.
So that's that slide that was missing, that part that needs to be identified. So,
Yeah, that area right up the front of USG owns that.
right through here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's all locked up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all that,
yeah.
the riverfront area.
But I think, look, what the meeting 2 months ago was extremely productive, and what you guys helped identify, those areas that have been identified is real nice, so.
Okay.
So I'll just get back with the consultant on those types of land uses there. They've started drafting the amendments, and my guess is they'll start coming forth with those amendments for you guys to go ahead and review. Maybe the comp plan with the zoning ordinance.
Do you know when they're gonna do that open house? Any ideas when they're planning on it?
No,
Sometime in the spring.
probably late spring, summer, I would think, yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, Beth, unless you have anything else on that,
Nothing else.
did anyone else have any comments on? All right, then we will finish up. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Yes.
All right. What was that? Okay, Tommy and Arlen, okay, we are voting to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. No opposed, so we are adjourned at 7:30, and thank you everyone for your comments.
You guys are coming.